The former president of the Senate, Bukola Saraki, recently declared his intention to run for president in 2023 on the ticket of the People's Democratic Party, PDP. Saraki vowed to ensure that all Nigerians have a greater sense of what it means to be Nigerian if allowed to rule the country. This is, however, not the first time he is declaring his interest to compete for the presidential seat, as he had expressed similar intentions. Is Ilemona Onoja. He is the special assistant to Dr. Bukola Saraki, and he joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Onoja.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. So let's start with, we already in the opening, I have said that he's not a newcomer to, this contest. But then, of course, everybody would ask as a first question, why does your principal want to be president?
I think that's a very straightforward answer. He wants to become president because he has the requirements, the contents, the character, the capacity to help Nigerians and Nigeria develop a Nigeria of our dreams, the sort of Nigeria that we all want for, we all wish for. I think it's very straightforward. Over the years, over the course of a very glowing political career that spanned about 20 years, he's developed the sort of advisory, executive, legislative, and then head of legislative experience that helps give him a worldview, that gives him an adequate understanding of how of the many challenges our country faces, how to overcome these challenges, where the...
Mr. Naja, are you still there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, we lost you for a second. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so he has the sort of experience that helps him know how to overcome the challenges that face our country, where to get the resources to overcome these challenges are, how to, the legislative framework that is required, the implementation that is required to give impetus to that legislative framework, and so on. So it's a question of competence and capacity. And he's demonstrated over the course of his career, both in the public and the private sector, that he has that competence and that capacity. So, of course.
Now, I've spoken to many people who have, in time past, said they wanted to be president of this country, and Nigerians. And in 2015, we saw a lot of people throw their hats in the ring and say, we want to be president, we want to change the future and the fortunes of Nigeria. But here we are, almost seven plus years down the line, that has not been the case. What exactly is he going to do differently that should make anybody even look in his direction?
That's a really impressive question. The first thing that makes me, and sometimes, a lot of people in my generation think that question. Why would anybody want to be president? There's sometimes the belief that Nigeria is a hopeless case and that things will not change. But the reality is that Nigeria is not a hopeless case. Nigeria can change. What Nigeria requires to change is people who have a clarity of vision, who have competence of ability, who have content of character to apply themselves to build the systems that we require to change Nigeria. Over the years, I agree with you that we hear that a lot. And we heard that a lot in 2015 from people who delegation to president of the Senate to stand up for the Nigerian people. And he would tell people, he will be a bridge between conservatism and liberalism to ensure that all our people are protected. We have an application of both worlds. You 7, oh my God, he's a competent person in the economy. Our economy needs a critical overhaul. There's a lot of things that he would do differently, particularly different from the last 7 years that we have seen that have been characterized by pain and suffering and sorrow. No, that's not the way we're going to go. Dr. Bukola Saraki and those of us in this team have been putting together plans to ensure that we take power back to where it belongs with the Nigerian people. We put our hands to work, we put our young people to work, we protect our old people, we make our farms and our industries productive, we rebuild value in our currency, we ensure productivity of our people, we take into consideration the character of our people, the creativity of our people, and we seek to apply that creativity and that character. There's a lot that we intend to do differently, and I believe that over the course of the campaign period, we'll be communicating with the Nigerian people, very well detailed plans of what the intentions are, where the money will come to fund those intentions, and the effects it will have on the lives of everyday Nigerians. Interesting.
You talk about a Nigerian or your principal as someone who's going to be a bridge builder. I beg your pardon, tongue twister. Yes, it's interesting that you said that. Now the country is at a point where the South is pushing for a Southern presidential ticket. The Southern governors had said that people in the South should not vote for anybody who is not from the South. They should not, in other words, don't vote for anybody coming from the northern region. And then, of course, it brings that issue of zoning into question. I'm going to get to the point where I ask you where you stand on that and where your principal stands on it, knowing that he's also representing the North. But this is a conversation that is ongoing. Where does your principal stand on it, and then where do you stand on it, being that a lot of people, including the elder statesman, Clark, who has also said, look, step down and let Southerners run for this ticket?
I think that your origins of the president, the primary consideration, as opposed to competence and character and ability, it makes me wonder. We have done things differently. We've done things in a particular way for so long. It hasn't always worked for us, has it? The question is, here now, facing an existential crisis with two wars, right? In the two wars against terror, one in the northwest, one in the northeast, and a practical invasion of the north central part of the country by an armed militia, an agitation for secession in the southeast, an agitation for secession in the southwest. Origins of our president is what the focus should be. We have underemployment at astronomical levels. We have youth unemployment at topping 50%. Our farms are unsafe. We have a failing healthcare system. Really? Is that? I don't know that zoning is the fundamental that we should be looking at in what our next president should be. I don't know that it is. I'm speaking for myself now as a Nigerian citizen, as I have a right to, that I don't think that it should be. I know that my principal has spoken at fora where he says that zoning is a consideration, but it cannot be the only consideration. And I agree. Now, if we're going to speak about this zoning, people speak about this thing and talk about equity and justice. But where is the justice and the equity in this argument? And I'll make the argument. In the history of this country, in the history of our political party, first and foremost, the PDP, four geopolitical regions have had the opportunity of producing a president, a vice president, or a presidential candidate. Four. They are the Southwest, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, the South-South, former Vice President and then President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, the Southeast has been, the Northwest, former President Mario Yar'Adua, the Northeast produced Vice President Atiku Abubakar and presidential candidate in 2019 general elections, right? Four. Only two regions in this country have never produced a presidential candidate on the platform of our. All presidential candidates in this country. Things that make you wonder, will we have a country by the next presidential election in 2027? Zoning, the languages we speak, the part of the country you're from, the God you worship, cannot be the fundamentals for choosing who our next president should be. What that has to be is competence, is character. It's the ability to rebuild our economy. It's the ability to make our old people safe. There and measure, should we choose this person or not choose this person on the basis of what he has shown us he can do over the past and what he's promising to do in the future. That's what I'm advocating. Final thing. I'm particularly committed to my principal's candidature because of that. while he was president of the Senate, he showed an ability to bring people to a table, to have a conversation about what we want to put into the country and what we want to get out of it. He showed the ability, the skill, the dexterity to be able to do that, in spite of significant odds. In 2023, post-2023, we're going to need a president. We need a president that can help us rebuild our commitment.
The fact that he's done a lot, he's built, a certain persona that, in fact, you have painted a picture of him as the kind of person that we need. But then you pointed out the issues that we're facing as a country today, and you're saying that that's not the Nigeria that we want. Yes, but he's been the Senate president. He has been. He has also been a governor. He's been in government for a while. What did he do to prevent those odds that we're facing today? The issues of ethnic divisions. The reason why we have these non-state actors and these secessionists that you have made mention of is because of a lapse of judgment on the part of our leaders, being part of those leaders. And so sitting down there and having this conversation also shows that your principal must have somewhat been complicit and played a part in the problems that we're facing today. Or am I wrong?
I think you're wrong.
Okay.
Categorically, I think you're wrong.
Go ahead and explain.
When you want in his time as senior advisor to President Olusegun Obasanjo on budget, let me start from there, which is the youngest position he ever held in government. As senior advisor, a special advisor to President Olusegun Obasanjo on budget, he set out the framework for the passing of the Fiscal Responsibilities Act, which is supposed to be an act that guides our budgeting process. Is the law, is the regulation that we use, the primary regulation for our budgeting process to this day. He did that in the year 2000. 22 years later, we still rely on the work that was done by a special advisor to a president. What we have there is the executive not always complying with the provisions of the Fiscal Responsibilities Act. I can move on. As governor of Kwara, which example should I use? Is it the aviation school in Ilorin? Is it upgrade of infrastructure in Kwara State? Is it the redesign of what commercial farming should be? As president of the Senate, before we go to president of the Senate, as senator representing Kwara Central Senatorial District, was he not the person who moved the motion for the investigation of the fuel subsidy regime, and thereby blowing open one of the biggest corruption scandals in this country that persists to this day? Was he not the person? Should I give you an example as president of the Senate? Let the Senate that has passed the most number of bills, that has treated the most number of motions, that stood between the Buhari administration and the maladministration of Nigeria for at least 4 years. He's shown over the course of his character, of his career, the ability to take unpopular decisions, unpopular with Nigerian public, unpopular with his political party, but which always, at all times, stand for the best interests of the Nigerian people. It's a simple thing. There's a plethora of evidence over the course of his career that has shown his ability to push forward the sort of executive, the sort of legislative reforms that we require to run our country. Have
those reforms that you're making mention of, because it's one thing to say, oh, we've passed the most bills. How have those bills transformed the life of the average Nigerian, or even the processes that lead to the transformation of the life of the average Nigerian? Because here we are having the same conversation, and you're pointing to stuff that he did, all fine and dandy, but how has it translated to bettering the lot of the average Nigerian in 2021? If this is some legacy that we need to point to.
I can give you one example. One of the biggest issues now that we've had to deal with, right, for the last 2 years has been police reform, right? One of the biggest.
How reformed is the police? That's a whole kettle of fish on its own.
Responsive citizenry to the institution that we already distrust and do not like on account of police brutality. The National Assembly led to the 8th Assembly did the very speedy passage of the Anti-Torture Act to criminalize, to define what torture is, to criminalize it, and to punish it. Never done in our Nigerian history. The 8th Assembly led the debate for the reform of the Police Act that hadn't been reformed for, 60 years? That hadn't been amended for, 60 years? President Buhari refused to sign the amendments to that act. As a legislator, he's done his job. At all times, what we must hold him to is his job. Has he done his job as a legislator? That's to healthcare, to primary healthcare. Now, if we fix primary healthcare, and there's a plethora of positions from the experts on this, that if we fix primary healthcare, we would reduce Nigeria's systemic healthcare issue by almost half. It's not our fault if the executive refuses to implement it. As a legislator, he's done his job. Let's go to the economy. The Senate under him passed what must have been 11 bills that were all aimed at revamping our economy and making sure that critical sectors of our economy worked, that we're able to find the investment that we need to turn it over, that we're able to find the structures that we need to help hold our economy up, make it easier to register companies, make it easier to get them, give more security to investors. As a legislator, it's not his fault if the executive refuses to sign those bills or if they do not implement after signing it, is it? What we must do at all times is hold him responsible for the outcomes, for the job he does per time. At the head of the legislature.
Well, I think that we're having connection issues, Mr. Naja. If you can hear me, can you hear me?
Our healthcare systems to reform our.
Can you hear me, Mr. Naja? Because I think we lost you for a second. Mr. Naja, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, great.
Marianne.
Go ahead. Yes, we lost you for a second.
Yes. So I'm saying I'm responsible for the outcomes related to the job he's doing per time, and not for the failures of another arm of government. If anything, one thing that we must be grateful for is that under Dr. Bukola Saraki, the 8th Senate stood up to the failures documents relating to that loan, evidence for the application of that funding. Show us how we're going to repay that. Show us documents.
I want us to move away from that and talk about, I mean, you continuously have harped on the person, which is great because you are trying to sell him as a brand or a person who's fit for that office. But then, again, I want to go back to 2015 where a person was sold to us as a product, a no-nonsense general. And we kept harping on the personality. We put our trust in a person. And here we are. I mean, you and I can attest to the fact that we're where we are, not because this is where we expect it to be.
We can fix Nigeria. No. It will require to make our institutions work. It will require commitment from the Nigerian people. What we're saying is that let us elect a president that will allow our institutions work. Let us elect a president that will carry the Nigerian people along, that will communicate with them, that will listen to them. That's what we're saying. We're not saying, Bukola Saraki is an infallible person. No, we're saying that we want to believe in the ability of our institutions to function, of our countries' socio-political structures to function. And we're saying, let's have a president that steps out of their way and allows them to do their jobs. Let's have a president that tells the country, these are my plans. This is what I plan to do. This is how I intend to do it. This is where I need your buy-in. This is where we will get the money to do it. These are the outcomes by which to measure me. We don't want a president that shuts down conversation, that shuts down debate. We want a president that contributes to debate, that encourages debate, that listens even to the youngest of people. As long as you're good enough, you're old enough. That's what we want, and that's what we're saying that Dr. Bukola Saraki represents. In 2015, we had a president that made those promises, the benefits that it brings. This is not what we're saying to people at this time. We're saying
Saraki, and we thank you so much for speaking with us.
It was a pleasure talking to you, Marianne, and talking to Nigeria.
All right. Well, thank you all for staying with us. We'll take a short
With regards to the electoral laws, well, I do not care too much about those laws as much as I care about the human resources that are going to conduct elections. And INEC, as it is presently composed, is made up of people who don't have the credibility to conduct free and fair elections. I'm not interested in zoning. I hope that Nigeria would continue to search for competent Nigerians who can run this country effectively, efficiently, in a just and egalitarian manner, so that these ethnic jingoists will not have a say in how we run our lives. We have done this whole rotational presidency for 20 years now. We've taken the presidency. Nigeria has taken the ruling class of the location of its village. Well, we will regret it.
So we are saying that what obtained about 60 years ago cannot confidently obtain now. So with respect to grazing routes, as a matter of fact, we're in a modern civilization. Modern civilization does not really give room for somebody taking cattle from the north down to the Parakot. Efforts must be made. These boys that are taking these cattle, they should go to school. In fact, when you look at pastoral nomadism, it's one that took place about 100, 200 years ago. There's no civilized world today you find people following cattle.
There's a great deal of reform required in the national security sector, especially with the police. I don't see any serious reforms going on. Where I would have said maybe a lot of money is going on into training, this, that, and so on. No. In nearly every state, where today we have the military complementing the effort of the police on ground, we know how much state governments are spending. And that is why some of the governors are saying, allow us to have our own police force. And then this money, or this entire monies we are pumping in at the various state levels, will go into our own police. The federal government could lay out the guidelines. We're not saying give them a free hand. Our politicians are not as mature as that. Governors, they are like children. They are like little people.
Things are shying away from rotation of power because in less than, the governor of Ondo State to categorically say that if any party feels a northerner, the southerners won't support. And I must say this: you see, democracy, whether we like it or not, is a government of numbers. Is a product of numbers. I mean to say, and the fact is that the northern part of Nigeria still holds sway in terms of voters' power. So it holds on any candidate, whether it's particularly candidates coming from the south, to romance the north. Like what have Tinubu doing at the moment? For every little thing here and there in the north, he was in Zamfara before he traveled to London and so on. And even the vice president, whether he has declared or not, but you see him romanticizing the north. He was in Kano State for a public lecture 2 days ago, but
a lot of challenges. The growing youth population with little engagement, that is a ticking time bomb. We are a blessed people with diverse culture and highly cerebral minds who have a lot to say. And yes, we are talking. It is important we drive the right conversation that informs, inspires, influences thought and action. If we say there's beauty in our diversity, then let us embrace our diverse culture. We must continue to courageously be the voice of transformation, as we are the hope for the future. Yesterday's conversations shape today. What are you saying to shape your tomorrow? We know you have a lot to say, and we...
How can the Niger Delta story be changed for the better?
Join Mamude Akuga at 9 p.m. every Friday evening on PlusTvAfrica as he probes deep in search of solutions.
Inside the Niger Delta with Mamude Akuga, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region.
It's still Plus Politics. Now, the recently concluded Ekiti state primaries of both the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressive Congress were rife with infighting and calls for cancellations. Now, in the case of the APC, the governor, May Mala Boni, led caretaker committee of the party was urged to annul the party's primary over alleged irregularities. The primary had held despite protest of 7 of the 8 aspirants jostling for the APC governorship ticket. Those of them who were annoyed called for the suspension of the exercise over the allegation that the local government committee members to serve as electoral members were campaigners and supporters of a particular aspirant. Now, the exercise was eventually won by former Secretary to Ekiti State Government, Biodun Oyebanji. Well, joining us to discuss issues and what happened behind the scenes is Bimbo Daramola. He is a former member representing Ekiti North Federal Constituency 1 in the House of Representatives. Mr. Daramola, thank you so much for joining us. Apologies for the connection issues.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to be back here again.
Great.
I knew that technology has a mind of its own sometimes.
Interesting. So after the primaries, just as I said, there were a lot of people complaining about the irregularities that marred the primaries, including your principal. A lot of people said that, you know, they needed the process to be done all over again. But then the winners said, look, we don't know what you're talking about. This was a free, fair, and credible primaries, and the winners emerged, and this is who the party is going to stand by. But tell us exactly what happened, what you think happened.
What happened before, during, or after? Which of them do you want to know now?
Because I'm asking this question because your principal at some point, in fact, the person who you have been campaigning for, was one of the people who was saying...
has decided to clean the feelings of not only the aspirants by themselves, but also the disaffection of party people who ordinarily would have also voted for these people. You will recall 700 votes, not even up to 1,000. And now for the guy who used to be a member of Representatives for 4 years and did well, you know, somebody who had run for governor before in 2018, you know, also now a serving senator, he had doubled up in trying to do a lot for the people. So he had earned the trust of the people, and is that a whole lot of things are going on. The case is in court, I believe, challenged by one of them, one of the aspirants, in the person of Prince Adetayo Adeyeye. Mm-hmm. And then a number of other people had also felt that, well, even if all of them decides to go to court, that is even if, the case will still have to be consolidated and merged into one place and then be treated as that. And I think issues started coming up, people started accusing the fact that some of them had preferences to want to leave the party. So my principal in this circumstance decided to issue a statement where he clarified that there was no need to go to court anymore. Interest in the process cannot be best served outside of the party.
But I'm curious, sheathing his sword is one thing, which is great, but does it, one way or the other, say or bring a form of certainty that these issues will be addressed, or is it just going to be swept under the carpet because who has been anointed or whoever has, won that primary is going to be the one that finally becomes governor, or decides, or that's the person the party is going to decide that will run against whoever else, any other political party that comes? Because from how you sound, you don't sound as if you are certain that any changes would happen. I mean, I'm asking this because the APC has also been facing its fair share of internal problems all across the country. And we keep hearing about these reconciliatory moves, but underneath, there's still warring factions. There's still tension within the party and unsatisfied party members. So really, is this just your principle resigning to fate, knowing that really nothing is going to come out of it, or is there anything else to it?
Well, this is not about resignation to fate. A number of things are beginning to unfold. And like I said, I need to re-echo this and make it very sharp. Number one of the aspirants are taking this case to court. So it's going to be duplicitous. No, I mean duplicity, rather, not duplicitous. Duplicity, if even it decides to go to court. That's number one. Number two, it also stands to reason that whatever injustice has been perceived to have been done via the process can only be best resolved within the case again. But let me say to you that the National Convention of the party is coming up, have been either by consensus or by election, getting into those positions, filling those positions that are being occupied by the caretaker committee now. One of the things that I believe will be on the front burner issue for the incoming administration will also be some of the issues.
Almost out of time. Just quickly, just answer this question. The issue of direct primaries has also been, in the news as per APC. Now, I'm asking because the Nigerian human rights community has described the primaries in Ekiti State as a demonstration that direct primaries remains the best option for APC's internal democracy. Looking at all the things that have played out, they've also somewhat suggested that whatever irregularities that the members of the party or the contestants felt, had marred the situation, they think that this was pre-planned and this was what, in quotes, the masters wanted. I'd like to get your 2 cents on it before we wrap up.
Well, I don't know the community that you said. I actually said that. And
they're the Nigerian human rights community. In other words, they're a group of human rights writers and observers.
I'm not too sure some of these guys. I don't.
It's an opinion. You tell us what you think.
Well, by generics, I believe very strongly direct primaries serves the purpose of the party, not only APC. But one thing that we have observed from this election going forward is the fact that in future, there are so many pitfalls, so many landmines along in the processes leading up to the expression of the will of the common man who is a member of the party. So those things, I reckon, will demand attention, particularly by people who are contesting elections in the future. I'm not too sure that anybody will go this route again in future without paying particular attention to the things that have marred the integrity of the process, as we have seen in the last election.
Well, I want to say thank you. Bimbo Daramola is former member representing Ekiti North Federal Constituency 1 in the House of Representatives. Thank you so much for speaking with us. We appreciate it. Well, that's all for tonight on Plus Politics, but we leave you, before we go, with something that Nigerians are saying about political parties that they prefer. And this is On Street Views. I am Mary Anacon. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening. And happy Valentine's Day.
Some other another party should take over, because for PDP has been ruling for a very long time. APC has also been ruling for a very long time. And let me just say, they
for Nigeria, so we need another people make up.
This one will tell you this one will tell you that when they are campaigning, they will promise you so things. They are going to make good, bring good school, food, good road, all this one. Nothing is working in this country.
I think we should try another political party. Maybe we will see difference.
These two parties, they are the same group of people. It's recycling. You understand? They keep.
Entertainment scene worldwide.
We also interview all your favorite celebrities
in Nigeria.